Welcome, everyone, to the Provo Municipal Council regular meeting. It is Tuesday, October 1st, 2024, and it is 5:33 p.m. We will announce the elected officials. We have Councillor Gary Garrett, Councillor Becky Bogdan, Councillor Travis Hoban, Councillor Rachel Whipple, Councillor Patrice McKay, Councillor George Hanley, Councillor Craig Christensen, and the Mayor, Michelle Kafusi. The opening prayer will be done by Craig Christensen today, and then we will have the Pledge of Allegiance by Councillor Hoban.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity to gather here as citizens in this municipal council. We're grateful for this wonderful country we live in, this beautiful state, and this wonderful city. Grateful to be able to serve and to make positive differences and to work together. We appreciate the discourse and dialogue from our neighbors and fellow citizens who help make us all better. We're grateful for those who serve us and protect us, our fire and our police, who do such a good job at keeping us safe. We're grateful for all those who dedicate themselves to the betterment of this city and give thanks in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will have recognition of Provo City's October 2024 Employee of the Month presented by Mayor Michelle Kafusi and Chief Hedman.
All right, Chair McKay and Vice Chair Whipple and members of the Municipal Council. Today, we are privileged to honor an employee who has demonstrated exceptional care for an exceptional community. It is with great pleasure that I introduce Chief Hedman, our fire chief, who will be presenting our October 2024 Employee of the Month Award to a remarkable individual in a fire department. Chief, would you like to come up?
Thank you. Council, Mayor, thank you. It's an honor to present the October Employee of the Month Award to our Executive Assistant, Carrie Hill. Carrie has been Executive Assistant for the fire department for the past 14 years. She's had the opportunity to be the executive assistant for 3 different fire chiefs. Carrie always can see the needs of the office. She's always ahead of the game and way ahead of me. She has the difficult task of keeping me in line and on task, and she does a great job of that. Carrie doesn't wait to be asked to do something. She sees a need and she jumps in and gets it done. One example would be we started deploying wildland firefighters throughout the state and the country. And to do that comes an enormous amount of paperwork and in order to recoup our costs. Carrie saw the need, she stepped in, she took over that billing program, and she does all of our billing for the wildland firefighters. And the revenue from that funds our WUI program, our Wildland Urban Interface program. So it's one of the many things she does. Carrie and the other office assistants, Cammie and Maureen, are the backbone of our fire department. Without them, we couldn't do the job we do. The best part about Carrie is her attitude. She's humble, she's approachable, she's friendly, she's kind. Nobody comes into the office that doesn't stop in and say hi to Carrie. She's just an amazing person to work with, and it's a pleasure to award her the Employee of the Month, and it's even a bigger pleasure to call her my friend.
Call her up.
Come on up, Carrie.
Appreciate it. Why don't we come down and take a photo? Oh, yay. Post it. You love
Yes.
that.
My husband's back there laughing full conversations.
All right, next we have a presentation regarding Provo City's quarterly report on the fourth quarter of the fiscal year 2024. This will be presented by John Borgett.
Thank you, Chair McKay and the council. It's an honor for me to come to discuss the fourth quarter of our fiscal year 2024, which just ended in June. And a couple things that I would just kind of start as our little high level that we do each month is that each quarter. The quarterly report is intended to give an unaudited summary information to the reader about Provo City's revenues and expenses for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2024 ended June 30th. And I would just mention that our auditors, independent auditors that are contracted with and engaged through the council, started their actual field work this week. And so they will be here for 6 weeks or so. And then we expect to have the report to council. The annual report will be the audited report, the first meeting in December. And so this is just to kind of give you a little bit of a peek. These numbers are not audited, but they should be pretty close to what you'll see in a couple of months. One of the things that this provides that's helpful is a 5-year comparison so that you can look at how our revenues and expenses look over compared to the last 5 years. And it's, I think it'll be helpful. So this right here is the general fund, and it shows the revenues and transfers in. And as we've had discussions with the council in the past, our revenues came in a little short, primarily because of sales tax. Our sales tax numbers were about 2.2 million below the budget. And then our transfers were slightly down. So the good news is through what I would consider to be good fiscal management, we came up with operating ways to offset that shortfall in revenues. And it primarily came from 2 areas. One had to do with payroll savings from positions that weren't filled, and we stepped in and managed that. Didn't use any of that money for carryovers or other operating uses. It was purely set aside to help deal with the shortfall. We also had some budget saving measures and some budget that wasn't used, and we were very tight and strict on carryovers, had a very limited carryover budget. We presented to the council that just recently. And so through what I would consider good management, we are not going to be having our fund balance in the general fund decrease as a result of the shortfall in revenues. The next slide, I'm just going to kind of walk through and talk a little bit about this. First, up at the top, you can see revenues are slightly below the budget. The budget is the red number. The blue number is the actuals. And then you can actually see the green. And so what actually really happened is we just had a slight decrease in revenues from the previous year. But as we had prepared the budget, we expected to have a little bit more revenue than that. And so once again, it's always hard to know exactly what's going to happen. And so that's just kind of an overall view. You can see the transfers as well. Transfers were just slightly below budget, but they exceeded the previous year. We go to the next slide, sales tax. Here is as you can see, our sales tax also was just slightly below the prior year, but we missed the budget on the number that I'd shown before. I wanted to also just mention and give the council an update that just this past week, we got our first sales tax distribution for fiscal 2025. And so we were watching it very closely, and I just want to give you a little bit of an update. Our numbers actually came in a little bit below the prior year. And we were actually about 4%, 4.5% below the budget. But as we dug in and kind of figured out a little bit more information, found a couple things. There was a large business within Provo that had an audit, and they had actually been submitting more sales tax than they should. And so they actually got a credit or a reduction, which actually means that the city of Provo got less because they paid less tax. And typically audits are over a 3-year period of time. So it was like a 3-year adjustment. And so that was an impact that was pretty significant for Provo, and it kind of impacted why we were a little below the budget. The other thing is that we had one of our fairly large retailers that missed the cutoff, and so they didn't report any revenues that month. And so things I don't believe are quite as gloom as they looked in the first distribution, but we are watching it closely, and we are going to keep the council informed and be managing that to make sure that we match our operations with our revenue, and we work closely with the council on that. So I'll just give you that update. With our recreation, Parks and Recreation Division, numbers came in a little bit below what we had from the previous year, and they were off a little bit from budget. As we've been watching and meeting with the Parks and Rec Division, as we budgeted for the upcoming year, we feel like we're going to be much closer to our budgeted number. I don't think that there's any significant things are going well at the rec center and the Parks and Rec department, but we just kind of through coordination and whatnot, we over budgeted just a little bit, but I would just say things are in good shape, and there's not a big concern there. Development services. It was interesting in fiscal year 23, we just had a lot of large projects and a lot of revenue that year. You can see how it's kind of been bouncing around like every other year. And then this past year, revenues were down from the budget as well as the prior year. We watched for that. We tried to take that into account when we budgeted for fiscal 2025. And so that's there. Also, you can see here, go to the next one. Franchise fees were pretty close to budget. Justice Court continues to have strong revenues, and a lot of that comes from over the COVID years, the state Department of Justice. We were limited in what we could do, and now things are fully up and operational. We continue to see pretty strong revenues in the Justice Court, well above the prior year, well above the budget. And when we budgeted for 2025, we actually planned and are planning for that level of revenues moving forward. This just kind of shows the general fund summary along with the expenditures and the revenues, and just gives you kind of a high overview of how those are coming in. Here we look at some general fund appropriations. I highlighted 2 of them in there, which are the personnel costs at the airport, mostly for fire and police. That was the result of needing to adequately support the airport with its expanded operations. And I would mention that the airport actually funded those 2 appropriations. So we received additional revenue that covers for that $620,000. And so even though it is an appropriation, we got revenue for that as well. And so it was a net zero. And so out of that 2.1, about 625 is money that we actually came in. The largest appropriation was the transfer for the airport on an interfund loan on some property that we bought adjacent to the airport. And we've been meeting with the council each year. We continue to monitor that, and are hopeful that in the near future with expanded revenues that potentially that's something that could be covered through airport revenues. The Innovation Fund just kind of gives you an idea of tracking and of the different projects related to the Innovation Fund there. Library, we came in at about a deficit of $680,000. The fund balance though is about 1.5 million, which is the number that Carla was hoping for. And as we know, we made the change with property tax revenue. That number that we're seeing there is kind of what was anticipated or expected. And so just give you the update on that. The golf course, I continue to see strong revenues at the golf course. You can see we well exceeded the prior year as well as our budget. The other thing that's happening is that slowly we're developing more fund balance at the golf course, which is a positive thing and a good trend. Our water operation, you can look and see here that once again, a lot of the revenues are with water are based on weather and rain and what happens there. And so we did exceed the prior year, but a little bit below the budget. Wastewater was slightly below the budget, but pretty close. Energy pretty much equaled their budget, and so they came in fine. Airport, as we continue to just see that the revenues are substantial, they're still in a pretty high growth mode and trending very positively, well above the budget and well above the prior year. A lot of that coming from parking revenues that are increasing substantially, as well as just the overall services there. And then sanitation, we were slightly above the budget in the prior year. Same thing with storm drain. And then our transportation utility came in above budget in the prior year. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's just kind of provides a high level overview, and we'll be coming back in a couple months with the actual financial report.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John? Councilor Handley.
John, could you say more about, we got an email earlier about the sales tax distribution, why Provo seems to be faring more poorly even compared to neighboring cities this year. Do we have any idea of what's going on?
Well, there's a couple things that I mentioned.
Okay.
The two things that I mentioned earlier narrow that gap quite a bit.
It was the large company you were saying?
Yes.
Okay.
That takes us to about around 5% above the prior year. And I know some of the other cities were a little bit more than that. There are some cities that were actually at that level, and so it gets us closer. But I do know that we've had some issues from time to time with cutoff, similar to this one large retailer I was telling you about. We also tend to just get some fluctuation. So 1 month is really hard to make any conclusions, but the numbers were different enough that we dug in and found a couple of things that we did.
Okay.
We'll be watching it closely. I know that some of the neighboring cities that are smaller, they're experiencing high growth. Okay, they typically month over month have outperformed us just because of their expansion. But the other cities that are a little more stable, like Provo, we tend to be much closer to them, and so I would expect to see that in other months. But we're watching it very
Okay.
closely.
Sorry to make you repeat that, but
No, that's okay. And
Thanks.
it's a concern that we have, and
Yeah.
we're watching it closely. But I really think that it's likely that we saw a little bit of anomaly because of these other factors for the month of July.
okay. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right. As indicated on the screen, a required public hearing will be held for certain items prior to council action. After each such item has been presented, time to comment will be provided for all those who wish to speak. For items that do not require a public hearing, public comment will still be taken following presentation of the item, but will be limited to 10 minutes. At this time, up to 15 minutes have been set aside for an open public comment period, which is intended to allow comment on matters that do not appear on the agenda, but are limited to topics regarding municipal business or within municipal council purview. Persons who speak during this time to an item that is on the agenda will not normally be afforded a second opportunity to speak during the comment period specific to that item. During any public comment period, each speaker will generally be limited to 2 minutes. Due to noticing requirements, no formal action will be taken in the meeting on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Those with comments are invited to approach the podium. Those participating on Zoom will need to do the raise hand feature to indicate they wish to comment. The chair may choose to alternate between in-person and online commenters. Please begin your comments by stating your name and your city of residence, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Do we have any public comment?
Hi, Bonnie Schifler Wilson. This is my, Provo. This is my therapist's idea. Deepest gratitude and thanks to the mayor, city council employees for hearing us, for sharing meals in our home to learn about homelessness and discuss solutions, for your correspondence, volunteering at Food and Care Coalition, for introducing me to local legislators, to the police department for their kindness and compassion towards my people and service to the community, for everyone's patience with me and work towards a better life for my people. I honor and recognize the tireless efforts of the Continuum of Care, the Winter Task Force, wraparound agencies, Provo City Housing, and churches who are providing warming centers and material support to the unhoused. In my lifetime, I've lived in 30 houses and experienced over 3 years of chronic homelessness. I've couch surfed, trespassed, squatted, lived in cars, shelters, safe houses, parks, and camps. I have 18 sexual assailants. I have experienced physical, sexual, verbal, emotional abuse, and neglect as a child. I have an ACE score of 8. I've been diagnosed with ADHD, complex PTSD, and bipolar 1. I've had 4 marriages, and I've had 23 years as a single mom. I've had 3 inpatient behavioral hospital stays. I was disfellowshipped from the LDS Church, excommunicated, and rebaptized. I've also been an instructor at the USU Piano Conservatory, ballet instructor at CVSB in Logan, ballet music that I composed at CVSB, a soloist at CVCB. I danced with the Festival of the American West. I've done costume design and construction, choreographed 2 ballets and 5 musicals, acted in 2 Rexburg community plays. I'm the founder and director of UVSB, a nonprofit.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you, Bonnie. Is there any more public comment? Hey, we're going to recess. All right, I believe we have a public comment online. If you can please unmute yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, wonderful. This is Stephanie Smith, and I am currently residing in El Paso, Texas. Should I just go? I'll just begin my comment. I am seeking to start a conversation on the topic and ultimately gain approval to host our property as a short-term rental. We are a military family, almost ready to retire. We are purchasing a home in Provo so we can be closer to our older kids. We would like to short-term rent the home when we are not living there. I have hosted and managed a short-term rental at our home in San Antonio for the past few years. I have experience and insight from my time as a super host, which means that I've earned 5-star reviews from all my guests each quarter. And I would like to share some of that insight. These are some of my talking points I would like to share. I carefully screen guests and use Airbnb's identity check features, preventing guests to book our home unless they had a valid ID, credit card, and other background checks on file. San Antonio has a no party rule throughout the city for all short-term guests. This alleviates the issues of neighbors complaining about loud music or noise. I managed tightly our San Antonio property, cleaned it, and staged it between guests, and have taught my older children the same ropes. My oldest daughter would be the primary manager of our Provo home, and I will assist her. She lives locally, and my other 2 older children also live in Provo and can help keep an eye on things as well. Within my house rules, I indicate quiet hours, the no party policy, and remind guests that they are staying in our home in our neighborhood. If they ever broke the house rules, which never happened, they would be asked to leave and would forfeit the rest of their stay. And
Thank you. Just so you know, that it went out of time. You probably can't see that from your perspective, but feel free to send us an email with any more information that you want to pass on to us, and our staff will put the email in the comments in Zoom. All right, next we have an implied motion on a resolution approving the appointment of individuals to various boards and commissions, and this was presented by Mayor Michelle Kafusi.
Chair McKay and Vice Chair Whipple and members of the Municipal Council, I am recommending the following appointment to the Housing Authority Board as indicated below and submit this for the council's advice and consent. Michael Ann Gardner. Michael Ann has worked for several years as a director at United Way of Utah, where she has developed a deep understanding of our community's housing needs. She has valuable experience in board management and relations, fiscal oversight, and public relations. I am recommending that Michael Ann be appointed to the vacant term left by Christian Faulkner, ending June 30th, 2025.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the mayor? All right, we will do a vote on the implied motion. Councillor Bogdan. Yes. Councillor Christensen.
Yes.
Councillor Garrett.
Yes.
Councillor Handley.
Yes.
Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
Councillor McKay, yes. Councillor Whipple.
Yes, and I know Michael Ann. This is great.
Excellent. That passes 7-0. Next, implied motion on ordinance bringing the Hillsides and Canyons Plan to include a new appendix, and this will be presented by Michael Sanders, policy analyst.
Hello, council. So this was requested in December of last year when we passed the Hillsides and Canyons Plan originally. Took staff some time to draft the language. In July, we brought it to a work meeting where a few suggestions were made, and then the updated version, which is before you today and was in your packet, was recommended approval by the Planning Commission a couple weeks ago unanimously. So I don't know if there's any other questions about this item.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions for Michael? I don't see any. Thank you.
All right.
All right, this item is open up for public comment. Is there any public comment on this? All right, seeing no public comment, any council discussion? All right, we'll take a vote on the implied motion. Counselor Christensen,
Yes.
Counselor Garrett,
Yes.
Counselor Handley,
Yes.
Counselor Hoban,
Yes.
Counselor McKay, yes, Counselor Whipple,
Yes.
and Counselor Bogdan.
Yes.
So that passes 7-0. If there are no objection, we will now adjourn the Provo Municipal Council meeting by unanimous consent.
Made it.
Recording stopped.